Hello students, welcome to Biotech Academy. Today we'll discuss about protein folding and misfolding. If we recall from the previous lecture, proteins are the polymers of the amino acids, and it occupies, or in the cell it takes three-dimensional conformation, or it folds into the three-dimensional conformation to act on or to perform its specific task. There are four levels of in which the proteins are organized into primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary, and it is the correct folding of the primary sequence or of the amino acids in which then folds into the three-dimensional conformation, and it is the three-dimensional conformation that correct three-dimensional conformation that is essential, that is extremely essential for the protein to perform its desired function. And if the protein doesn't fold into correct three-dimensional structure, it will not perform that specific task. So today we'll discuss on how the protein folds and what happens, and if the protein doesn't fold into, or within the cell, if misfolding occurs, then it leads to different disease manifestations. So also in my previous lecture I mentioned that it is the sequence of the amino acids which determines, or the order of, or the specific amino acids, you can say they dictate what kind of secondary, tertiary or quaternary structure the protein will fold into. So there is very intricate sequence structure relationship, and it is the correct sequence, or the amino acids which guides the protein to attain the three-dimensional conformation. Now, in order to get into the details of protein folding and misfolding, let's first talk about the experimental evidence. The first experimental evidence which was provided by Anne Vincenz on correct folding, the attainment of this three-dimensional conformation, and its associated function. So today the topic we'll cover today is Anne Vincenz's experiment, where he demonstrated where this was the first experimental evidence, where he provided the first experimental evidence on protein folding, three-dimensional structure and function. So he demonstrated that if a particular protein is present in a specific conformation, then only it will perform its function. And if that structure, or if the three-dimensional conformation is lost or is denatured, then the function is also lost, and it is the function, depending upon the extent of denaturation, the function will be lost. So if the denaturation is to a limited extent, the protein will perform its function, but only to a limited extent. However, if the structure is lost or the denaturation or the denaturation is on a wider scale, the function will be completely lost. So the query protein, we will discuss in detail how he carried out the entire experiment and what was the conclusion and what were the principles behind. So you must remember over here what are the conditions for denaturation, which we discussed in our previous lecture, and what are the various kinds of bonds that stabilize the different levels of protein organization. So these two things you have to keep in mind in order to understand how the steps or the procedure he carried out in order to demonstrate this specific experiment. Okay, so his target protein or the query protein was ribonuclease. He carried out the experiment on protein ribonuclease. So this ribonuclease is basically an enzyme which carries out the hydrolysis of RNA. Okay, so this enzyme carries the hydrolysis of RNA, and it is isolated from bovine pancreas. You obtain this protein from bovine pancreas, which carries out the hydrolysis of RNA, and it has 4 disulfide bridges. The folded form has 4 disulfide bridges. It has 4 disulfide bridges, and it is composed of 124 amino acid residues. Okay, so Finson, he carried out the experiment on protein ribonuclease. This protein is basically an enzyme isolated from bovine pancreas, and what is the function of this protein or this enzyme? It carries out the hydrolysis. Of RNA. Okay, it is composed of 124 amino acid residues. And the folded form or the 3-dimensional conformation of this protein contains 4 disulfide bridges. So he selected this protein to demonstrate what happens if the protein is denatured, whether it performs its specific function or it doesn't. How he carried out the denaturation. He ensured that the protein loses its 3-dimensional conformation using certain steps, which we'll discuss in detail. So the classical experiment which he carried out 2 steps in his experiment. First was denaturation, and then second was renaturation. First, he tried to denature, or he tried to ensure that the 3-dimensional conformation of this protein is lost. Checked out the activity of the denatured protein, and then he provided external conditions to so that the protein or the amino acid regains its 3-dimensional conformation. So the second step was renaturation. So he carried out 2 steps, denaturation and renaturation, in order to demonstrate his hypothesis. And this experiment which he carried out, it proved, or it clearly indicated that it is the sequence of the amino acid in or the polypeptide or sequence of amino acids which are present in the polypeptide, which determines the three-dimensional conformation or three-dimensional conformation that the protein will attain, and it the function is dependent on ultimate three-dimensional conformation. And if in case that particular desired three-dimensional conformation or the tertiary structure is not attained by the protein due to certain mistakes during the folding process within the cell, the protein will no longer be able to perform its specific or specified task. Okay, so this experiment it is the conclusion from this experiment that the amino acid, it is the sequence of the amino acid which determines what kind of three-dimensional conformation that particular protein will attain, and the three-dimensional conformation again is extremely essential for the function of that protein. Okay, so and the two steps which he performed in his experiment was first was denaturation, and then second was renaturation. So in my previous lecture I have described what these two terms mean, but I'll just revise. Denaturation is when the native conformation is lost, and renaturation is when you allow the polypeptide to attain that native conformation, that is renaturation. So denaturation is you are making that protein the you're making that three-dimensional conformation of the protein to you're basically what you're doing is you are disassembling that three-dimensional conformation, and renaturation is again you're trying to assemble that polypeptide into that specific three-dimensional conformation, so by providing external conditions. So that is renaturation. So renaturation is when you are trying to provide conditions to the denatured protein so that it again attain that native conformation. So that is renaturation. Alright. So in order to denature the protein, he used certain agents. And what agents he used to carry out denaturation? In order to denature the protein, he used urea, guanidine hydrochloride, and beta mercaptoethanol. He used these agents for denaturing the ribonuclease protein, and we'll look into each component in detail. What is the function of each component? Why he selected urea or beta-ME, which is beta mercaptoethanol, or guanidine hydrochloride. Okay, so what is urea? Urea is an organic molecule, and it contains two amino group joined by a carbonyl group. So it has this urea at a concentration of 8 molar, at a concentration of approximately 8 molar, has the capacity to cause disruption of the non-covalent interactions in the protein. Again, guanidine hydrochloride also has, so these two basically affect, or these two break the the non-covalent interactions in the protein. And what are the non-covalent interactions which are present in the protein or which stabilize the conformation of the protein. Those are van der Waals forces, those are hydrogen bonds, those are ionic bonds. Okay, so this urea and guanidine hydrochloride, they break the non-covalent interactions in the protein, causing them to destabilize. What is the function of beta mercaptoethanol? It is a reducing agent, or it is a reductant, or it is a reducing agent which reduces the disulfide bridges into SH group, and it exposes the SH group. So it breaks the disulfide bridges, which are essential. These disulfide bridges are one of the major bonds which are involved in the stabilization of the tertiary structure. Alright, so he used these things for denaturation. Now coming to the experiment, what he used at what concentration. So Alfvénson, in his experiment, he used urea at a concentration of 8 molar to denature that protein which is known as which he studied was ribonuclease. Okay, and then he also treated the protein with beta mercaptoethanol in order to reduce the disulfide bridges. So suppose this is the folded structure. This is the folded structure of the protein ribonuclease. So it is composed of 124 amino acid residues, and there are 4 disulfide bridges. Say one disulfide bridges is here, the other is over here, the other is over here, and over here. Okay, so these are 4 disulfide bridges which are present in the protein. This beta mercaptoethanol, first urea, he used urea which breaks the non-covalent interactions in the protein, and then beta mercaptoethanol, it reduces these bridges so that it opens up. The folded chain, the folded polypeptide opens up into the linear conformation, and it may look like something like this, a linear chain. Okay, so the structure is, the 3-dimensional conformation is lost, so we can say that the protein is denatured. Now, so in the first step of denaturation, he used urea and beta mercaptoethanol. Then after denaturation, he carried out the enzymatic activity. So what is the enzyme? What is the function of this? It carries out the hydrolysis of RNA. So after denaturation, he studied the enzymatic activity. He tried to study the hydrolysis of the RNA using that denatured protein, and what he found was that the enzymatic activity was less than 1%. So not even 1% of the RNA was hydrolyzed. That means before denaturation, before treating the protein with ribonuclease protein with urea or beta mercaptoethanol, when he carried out the hydrolysis, the enzymatic activity was above 90%. He carried out the same enzymatic activity after denaturation, means after treating the protein ribonuclease with urea and beta mercaptoethanol, and then the activity, and when he studied the enzymatic activity, he found out that the activity was reduced to less than 1%. So there was a drastic decline in the enzymatic activity on denaturation. Means, so this point, what you can conclude over here, that these two denaturants which he used caused caused complete denaturation of the protein, because there was many-fold decline in the enzymatic activity, and in the unfolded form, the protein was not able to carry out the hydrolysis or carry out the specific task which was associated to it. Then in the next step, the second step, what he did was he tried to provide external conditions for the protein to again fold. So he tried to allow renaturation or refolding. How he managed to do that? From in this solution, try to understand that it's not that he's dictating the protein that you break the bronze. I'm giving you urea. You open up into the linear polypeptide chain. So everything is happening in the solution form. Okay, so then the solution now, the denatured solution has protein, the denaturants urea and beta-mercaptan, all beta-mercaptoethanol, all three things are present in this solution form. So how did he allow renaturation? So he tried to remove urea and beta-mercaptan ethanol. Okay, again, how? By dialysis. Okay, so using dialysis, he tried to remove urea and then provided optimum temperature which is present within the cell for the protein to fold. After protein synthesis, it folds into the specific three-dimensional conformation. So he tried to provide that optimum temperature, and using dialysis he tried to remove the urea. Okay, after dialysis, on completion of dialysis, when he completely removed urea and provided optimum temperature, also he tried to remove another thing which he gave to denature, that was beta-mercaptoethanol. So when he tried to remove these two things completely and provided optimum temperature, the protein folded into its native conformation. And how he concluded that the protein folded into its native conformation was, again, he carried out the enzymatic activity, and on renaturation, after renaturation, when he tried to do the enzymatic activity, when he studied the hydrolysis of RNA, he found out that the enzymatic activity was regained up to 80%. So means that a majority of the moieties have folded into its correct form. But then he tried again, he did another thing. When he removed both urea and beta-mercaptoethanol, he found out that the enzymatic activity was gained up to 80%. Then he thought, what if I remove only urea, and what if I only remove beta-mercaptoethanol? What will happen on the enzymatic activity? Whether the protein will be able to perform the function or not. So on removal of only individual denaturants, when he removed only, like this is on denatured protein, denatured enzymatic activity, then this is denatured when he removed both urea and beta-ME removal. Okay, now only only urea removal led to the enzymatic activity was up to 20% of the enzymatic activity was gained, and on removal of only beta mercaptoethanol not even 20% was activity was enzymatic activity was obtained. So all these things led to draw the conclusion that it is the sequence of the amino acids which determine what will be the three-dimensional conformation of the protein, and it is the three-dimensional conformation of the protein which imparts specific function to the protein, and if that conformation is lost or if that conformation is damaged by certain means, the activity or the function will be lost. And if you try to allow the protein, the misfolded protein, to again fold into its correct native form, then slowly, gradually the protein will regain its function. So this was the conclusion which he drew from the experiment, and this was the first experiment. This is the classical experiment which showed the correct folding of the protein is extremely essential for that particular protein to function. Based on this experiment only, many studies have been carried out, and it has been concluded that correct folding is absolutely essential for the protein to function, and if the protein doesn't fold into its correct form or it is misfolded, then it leads to impaired function or various disease manifestations. So we can summarize the conclusions from this experiment which he drew and which he provided was that ribonuclease A, in its native conformation, it has 4 disulfide bridges and it carries out the hydrolysis of RNA. Then the second conclusion, on treating this protein with urea and beta mercaptoethanol, the protein was denatured and it lost its function and it was no longer able to carry out the RNA hydrolysis. And because of the presence of beta mercaptoethanol, which is a reducing agent, all the 4 disulfide bridges were broken. Then the third conclusion was that the enzymatic activity was lost upon denaturation. The fourth point which was concluded from this was that it was also observed from this experiment that upon removal of urea, how he removes urea? By dialysis. So upon removal of urea and beta mercaptoethanol, the enzyme refolded into the correct form and tried to attain the native conformation and also regained its function and was able to carry out the RNA hydrolysis. However, he also, when he tried to remove individual components like only beta mercaptoethanol or only urea, then the enzymatic activity was not up to that mark, so the refolding was not that proper when he tried to remove individual components. So he concluded that with this beta mercaptoethanol, in the presence of beta mercaptoethanol, the disulfide bridges were not able to form, and if incomplete removal of beta mercaptoethanol definitely led to the formation of disulfide bridges, but the position was not accurate, and so the actual native conformation was not attained by that particular protein, and so the function was not regained. So these were the conclusions which were drawn from his experiment. And next, in the upcoming video, we'll discuss about protein folding and misfolding. So this is the classical experiment which demonstrated that correct folding of the protein is essential for its function, and if the protein doesn't fold into its correct form, it is rendered non-functional, or the function is not lost. The function is lost. The protein doesn't perform its designated task. So within this cell, if by mistake the protein does not attain its correct form, correct conformation, correct three-dimensional form, what happens to that misfolded protein? So, and what are the various steps which are present within the cell, starting from protein synthesis to protein folding? What are the various steps which are involved, and what is the fate of the misfolded protein? Because these misfolded proteins, they are totally waste for that cell, and they also cause various disease manifestations within the cell. So we'll study about all these things in detail in the upcoming video. Till then, you must go through the concept from the reference books which I have already mentioned, and if you all have any doubts or queries, you can ask me in the comment section or in the email ID, or you can send me a mail also. If this video was helpful to you all, if you find the content useful, please do hit like and subscribe to the channel for more such videos which will be helpful for your preparation for various competitive exams like CSIR, DPT JRF, ICMR JRF, GATE, etc. Till then, wish you all the best, and thank you. Study hard, prepare well, and crack the exam. Push your dreams in the right direction. Thank you.